Then, Ariana returned. She stepped forward, no longer hiding, her presence mighty and radiant. Her eyes glowed with purpose. "Have you noticed something strange?" she asked. Kayameka looked up from her meat pie, raising an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "It's Ariana," Amora said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "She doesn't eat. Not during break time, not even during lunch." Kayameka leaned back, thoughtful. "You're right. Now that I think about it, I've never seen her buy food or even bring any from home." The two girls looked across the field where Ariana sat alone on a bench under the tree, staring ahead with calm eyes and a faint, unreadable smile. Goosebumps crawled down Amora's arms. "She's different. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like she's not one of us." Kayameka nodded slowly, a chill creeping into her thoughts. Maybe she's hiding something. Just then, the bell rang. Break time was over. The students scattered back to their classrooms, but Amora and Kayameka couldn't shake the feeling that Ariana was more than just a quiet new girl. She was watching. She was waiting. And whatever it wasn't ordinary. The third-term exams were fast approaching, and the entire school buzzed with tension. Students crowded the library, burying their heads in textbooks, trying to prepare for the tough question ahead. Everyone was focused, except for Tasha and Bola, who laughed and gossiped under the mango tree, confident they would somehow scrape through like always. When the exams finally ended, there was a mix of relief and nervous excitement in the air. The results came out a week later. Teachers walked through the classrooms handing back mark scripts. Ariana sat at her desk, calm but expectant. She knew she had written well, especially in mathematics. So when her script landed on her desk, she turned it over with quiet confidence. But what she saw froze her in place. 0. Not even 1 mark. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages. Every question had a big red X beside it. The pain hit her chest like a hammer. The anger followed right after. She clenched her jaw, staring at the paper as a cold fire lit up in her eyes. "Freeborn has bitten off more than he can chew," she whispered under her breath. But she didn't storm out. She didn't cry or shout. She folded the script carefully, placed it in her bag, and walked back to her class with the same calm expression she always wore, only now, there was a storm behind her silence. She wouldn't speak. She wouldn't scream. She was simply waiting. And Mr. Freeborn had no idea what was coming for him. The next day, Ariana set her trap. She positioned herself near the JSS 3 classroom, knowing Mr. Freeborn would pass by. Sure enough, she saw him approaching from a distance. Good, she thought, this one will take the bait. As he neared, she smiled sweetly and called out, "Uncle, I'm here." Mr. Freeborn grinned, believing his persistence had finally paid off. He strolled over confidently, convinced that Ariana had fallen for him at last. "Are you ready now?" he asked with a smug smile. Ariana nodded slightly and replied, "Uncle, you know the levels." "Meaning, I'm already in." He chuckled victoriously. "So, when do we start this relationship?" he asked eagerly. Ariana responded immediately, playing her part perfectly. Mr. Freeborn glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then embraced her. After a brief moment, they stepped apart and walked away in opposite directions. From that day on, Mr. Freeborn became even more attentive. Every lunchtime, he brought her something, sometimes egg rolls and soft drinks, other times a plate of rice. He was doing everything he could to please her. Ariana, keeping up the act, would occasionally visit him at his house, much to his delight. One day, when she arrived, Mr. Freeborn was stunned by her beauty. She looked more radiant than ever. He cooked spaghetti and invited her to eat, but Ariana politely declined. "I already ate before coming," she said. "If you say so, my angel," he replied, smiling as he ate the food alone. After finishing his meal, he showered and changed into a pair of white boxers. Relaxing on the bed, he motioned for Ariana to join him. She agreed and sat beside him. Minutes passed. Then, without warning, Mr. Freeborn's body began to react strangely. A chilling sensation crept over him. He looked down, horrified, as his manhood started to shift, twisting, elongating, until it transformed into a massive, slithering python. Panic surged through him. He touched himself to be sure, and what he felt made him scream in terror. The snake moved beneath him, alive and real. He jumped up, yelling in disbelief. That's when Ariana began to laugh.
You think you can hurt people and get away with it? Your end has finally come.
As her laughter echoed through the room, her body began to change. Before his very eyes, she transformed into a giant cobra, majestic and menacing. Her glowing eyes locked onto his trembling frame. Mr. Freeborn dropped to his knees, sobbing and begging for mercy. But Ariana's voice was powerful and commanding, reverberating through the room like thunder. Go to the school and confess. The command echoed again and again, yet no one else could hear it. It was meant only for him. And then, she vanished. Just like that. The room fell into silence. Mr. Freeborn, gasping for breath, looked down again. His body had returned to normal. The python was gone. His manhood was restored. He collapsed onto the bed, shaken to his core. It's over, he whispered to himself. It was just a warning, just a scare. But little did he know, the real reckoning had only just begun. The next morning, Mr. Freeborn rose from bed with the same arrogance that had defined him for years. Dressing neatly in his usual attire, he strutted into the school compound as though nothing had happened the day before. He wore a smug smile, believing the nightmare had ended. To him, it was just a bad dream. A scare. Nothing more. But as he approached the school building, his heart skipped a beat. There stood Ariana. She was the first student to arrive that morning, calm, poised, and radiating a mysterious presence. Her eyes met his, and slowly she walked toward him. Without raising her voice, she leaned in and whispered words that struck cold fear into his bones. Go and confess. Startled, Mr. Freeborn blinked. But instead of taking her seriously, he brushed it off. It's over, he told himself. She's just trying to scare me again. He turned away and entered the class, trying to silence the fear creeping into his mind. As he began teaching, he caught Ariana's eyes again. She was watching him, silent, unmoving. Then, just as he turned to write on the chalkboard, he felt a chill crawl up his spine. Ariana had walked right up to him and whispered once more. Go and confess. This time, the words struck deeper. Mr. Freeborn's hands trembled. His voice faltered. He looked at her, eyes pleading. Please, please, I'm sorry, he murmured, but Ariana's face was firm, her voice colder than ever. When those innocent students you destroyed were begging, she asked, did you listen to them? Her words shattered the last piece of pride in him. Mr. Freeborn's head fell, heavy with shame. His mouth opened to beg again, but before he could speak, Ariana vanished. Right before his eyes. Disoriented and shaking, Mr. Freeborn stumbled backward. Sweat drenched his shirt. His lips trembled as he muttered, she's not human, she's not human. Then he screamed. I will confess. His loud outburst echoed across the school building. Students sitting in nearby classes stared in confusion. Who is Uncle talking to? One of them whispered. Another ran to call the principal. Within minutes, the entire staff gathered at the classroom door. Teachers, prefects, even the principal, all stood in shock as Mr. Freeborn dropped to his knees, weeping and shouting confessions. But it wasn't over. Right before their eyes, Mr. Freeborn's manhood twisted and grew, transforming into a massive python. It burst through his trousers, slithering around his legs as he screamed in agony. Chaos erupted. Students screamed. Teachers gasped. The principal froze in horror. Then, Ariana returned. She stepped forward, no longer hiding, her presence mighty and radiant. Her eyes glowed with purpose. Holding a staff in her hand, she struck the ground with it. "Confess it all," she commanded. And Mr. Freeborn obeyed. Word by word, he revealed every dark secret. The girls he had harassed. The grades he had manipulated. The threats. The lies. The shameful abuses of power. By the time he finished, the room was silent. No one could believe what they had heard. Some students covered their mouths in disbelief. Others wept, finally seeing justice done. As the truth settled, Ariana began to transform. Her body shifted, growing in size and power until she stood as a massive, majestic cobra, her scales shimmering, her fangs bared not in violence, but in victory. The students stepped back in fear, murmuring, "No wonder she never ate during lunch." The principal collapsed into a chair, too stunned to speak. The staff looked to one another, ashamed that they had never seen the evil hiding in plain sight. Then, just as powerfully as she had come, Ariana returned to her human form. She faced the crowd one last time, raised her staff, and declared with a thunderous laugh, "I'm fulfilled now." And with that, she vanished. Into the wind. Into legend. After Ariana vanished into thin air, silence fell upon the school compound like a heavy cloud. Everyone was frozen in shock, students, teachers, even the principal stood rooted, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Mr. Freeborn stood trembling, his body soaked in sweat, his eyes wide with horror. But suddenly, his manhood, the python that had disgraced him before the entire school, turned back to normal. He fell to his knees, weeping uncontrollably, ashamed and broken. For the first time in his life, Mr. Freeborn felt true regret. That day marked a turning point in his life. The man who once terrorized young girls with his abuse of power became a different person. He never returned to his evil acts. His pride was shattered, but in that brokenness, he found humility. He began treating students with respect, showing kindness and discipline, and was never again seen in secret places with any female student. His transformation shocked many who once feared him, but most of all, it brought peace to the school. For the first time in many years, the air around the school felt free. The burden of silence that once weighed on the students had lifted. Smiles returned to faces. Girls who used to walk with their heads down now lifted their chins proudly. The shadow that had lingered around the school was gone, chased away by the justice of an unseen force. And at the old bridge where it all began, where Amora and many others had once shed tears in silence, something beautiful happened. From time to time, the victimized students would pass by, and as they stood quietly near the water, they would whisper soft prayers, not of pain or fear, but of thanks. Thanks to Naga, the mysterious protector, the avenger of the brokenhearted. And there, when no one else was watching, a figure would sometimes appear, a beautiful girl with skin that shimmered like sunlight on water. Her face would glow with a smile of satisfaction, proud of what she had accomplished. Naga had fulfilled her mission. The evil had been exposed. Justice had been served. Peace had returned. And then, just like a breeze, she would disappear again, leaving behind a legend. A story the students would tell for years to come, the story of Ariana, the spirit who came in human form, to restore balance, to bring justice, and to remind everyone that no evil deed goes unpunished. And that brings us to the end of this story. What an interesting one, wahoo. Dear viewer, what lessons did you learn from this? I'm sure there's something that touched your heart. If you have a lesson to share, please drop it in the comment section, we'd love to hear from you. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to support our channel by subscribing. It's completely free. Thank you so much for watching.